25, 35 means they've become big. I've met companies with headcount of 100 and 300, but they are outliers. When I look at this world of startups, I find a large number of them are, entrepreneurs. They have that budding passion. They could have gone on to taking on well-placed jobs. But why did they start? And the second question which comes to my mind is, why did they focus on to immersive technology? So today we've got some beautiful young entrepreneurs who are blazing trails in whatever field they are taking. And all of them have come from one institution, that is Indian Institute of Technology in Delhi. Let me kickstart the discussion with first entrepreneur of the day, that is Shijit. Shijit is a success story. He went from IIT Delhi to MIT Media, and from there he started his entrepreneurial journey, came back to India, set up a company, and that company was later on taken over by Reliance, which is one of the biggest conglomerates in the Indian business scenario. So my question to you, Shrijit, is what made you leave MIT Media and start your own business, and that also coming back to India? And I know recently that your parent company has signed a deal with Facebook, which is possibly one of the biggest deal. It made quite a bit of coverage in the media. So what is that? Is that kind of impacting the work that you do? So this is what I want to explore with you. So over to you, Shrijit.
Sure. Thank you, Pradeep, for the great introductions. Like I was at the MIT Media Lab till about 2013 or so. And at that point of time, I was running this program called the MIT Media Lab India Initiative. And the whole goal with the India Initiative was that can we have a program in India which can bring people from different disciplines together, designers, technologists, engineers, all coming together and creating something innovative. So the goal at that time was not entrepreneurship. It was just to make sure that we can have a mix of people doing some really cool innovation at the edges of technology. And that's where I started meeting a lot of young talent in India across hardware, software design, who were doing, as we say, like they were doing a lot of, I would say, jugaad, as we say in India, to make sure that they can do something which is different. And that made me think that maybe it's possible to create something in the immersive space in India. And even before the immersive space, it's possible to create something which can have a hardware component in India. My whole research background at MIT was into 4D cameras, 4D light fields, making glasses-free displays. So I was anyways doing a lot of research work in AR, VR, and the future of AR, VR. So I started coming back to India much more often, like set up a small team in Mumbai because that's where the Indian initiative was based out of. And we started hacking around, trying to create some products which we feel might be fun and might have an impact on like certain businesses. So that's how the whole journey started. To be very frank with you, I had no intention of like creating all these products, being in India for 5-6 years. Being very honest, I thought I'll try it for 2 years. If it works out, great. Else I'll go back to the US. But then seeing the passion and the enthusiasm of all the young people around me, I realized that it's something that even though if we fail, India really needs. Like somebody needs to try it out, and let's see what happens. We succeed, we fail, but let's at least try it out. So that made me. I mean, I invested all the capital I had ever earned like into this company. Like the most probably was the previous exit I had in US. So I just put in everything. Till the Reliance deal, we were bootstrapped. We didn't raise a single like capital from outside of me in this company. And and then about last year, I think like the folks at Reliance approached us. We started conversations, and like suddenly it happened that our visions are pretty much aligned. And I feel that there's no better company in India who can take things to scale than like Reliance. So I've been working with Geo and Reliance, and then as you said, the whole Facebook deal is the biggest private equity deal and the whole investment deal in India. It does not impact much. I think the whole Facebook deal is also about to make sure that Facebook's visions across like business verticals are aligned with Reliance, and AR VR is one of them. And as you know, Facebook has deep investments in VR with Oculus and everything else. So that is how the whole story has sort of panned out. There have been a lot of things
One
in the middle.
question I have, Shizit, is that have you gone through days like, you're wondering whether tomorrow you're still going to be surviving, not surviving, or has it been hunky dory all the while? What's the path like?
No, I can tell you. I mean, we were when I first started a company in Mumbai. I think it's a very interesting story. We did not have an office because the only office was the Media Lab India office, and I didn't want to use that for a private company. So we were actually working out of something called a yellow fever hospital, which is near the airport. So if you've ever been to Mumbai, there's something called APHO, which is the Airport Hospital Organization, and there's a quarantine center that they do for people with yellow fever coming from like African countries. Now that hospital was scarcely used. We worked with the like central government on that, and they gave us a huge space in which they used to quarantine about 300 people. So we started with a 10-15 member team, and all those guys are part of my Media Lab India program. And trying to create this product at that point was a 360 virtual reality camera. And our goal was that we were going to disrupt the real estate industry, and the way they're going to see images is not in 2D but in 360 VR. And we started building it out. That happened for about 4 months. It took us 4 months to get our first product out. And then suddenly I was out of cash. I had no money. And all the money I had spent in R&D and everything, and there was no money to pay salaries. And then suddenly people started leaving. And there was a time of 3 months, I remember, where the company was there on paper, but it was not existent. I'd moved to Delhi because there was, at least my parents were there, so I had a house there. And then slowly and slowly, I rammed it back again. And some of the core people joined back. We started in Gurgaon again because of the manufacturing abilities that we get in Gurgaon. And then that continued for 3 more years. And there have been multiple times where we have been thinking that should we pay salaries or should we invest or what should we do? And I think that is a very important learning, at least I can tell you, is because scarcity of resources makes you prioritize things. If you have $1 million in the bank, you don't really prioritize. You really prioritize from a short-term, long-term perspective on where should you invest, what you should cut to make sure that ultimately the company and the potential and the vision can reach some level of fruition. Yeah.
Fabulous. I love it. Now I want to move on to Kanav. I mean, this guy, when he was in second year, he started a company, and by fourth year, he had sold out the company also. I don't know what did he do with all the money that he got, but that is, and then this guy is actually a civil engineer, and within 3 years' time, he's built up a pretty decent business in AR. So, kind of, what is the story of is this part of your DNA, and how where is civil and AR? I know there are a whole lot of applications, in terms of this thing, but fresh out of college, what's the story?
So, Pradeep, like you said, like, is it in the DNA? So, absolutely, that's the case with me. Like, it was not a planned, story for me that I have to go into entrepreneurship, but I've seen this in my family, with my father as well, that, how businesses run and how you create something on your own and then you scale it. And then, you have a family of people who are working with you. So, from childhood, from my, young school days, I've seen that with my father. I was involved in some way or the other, trying to help him out with, how I can contribute to his success and his business. And when I got into IIT, that was like the biggest, sandbox for me to explore my entrepreneurial drive. That you have so many opportunities that are lined up there, and you have people who are ready to mentor you, and people who can actually tell you their real stories of how entrepreneurship happens, and how you have to create something, how you create an impact out of it for the industry out there. So that's something that really kept me indulged with the entrepreneurial spirit that I have. And because of that, I created my first venture within my second year when I was at my dorm room. That was our office then, and we used to run the entire operations from there, me and a couple of my batchmates. And summer vacations was the time when we used to actually scale, because that's where we got the time to get interns from the college itself, and bring in people who know design, who know some bit of UI, UX, or some people who are learning a few other things in IIT, because that is something which is there within the campus ecosystem. Within campus, you will find talented people who want to do something, and they want to actually contribute to their own skill set, and to the new startups as well. So it was very lean. We, like, when you are in college, you have no expenses at all. So the only expense you have is your own. You don't have to manage salaries, or you don't have to manage the real estate costs.
If I may ask
So
you one thing, so did you kind of take your dad's money, or did you kind of start on your own when you were in college for that business that you were doing? This is to you, kind of.
we were very lucky at that time. Yeah, yeah. Pradeep, can you hear me?
Yeah, it's dropping in and out. Yeah. Maybe I'll come back to you.
Yeah. So we were very lucky because the kind of business that we started, there was no initial capital or initial investment that was required. So it was very easy to get the business up and start doing it, because the only thing that we needed was to go out and meet our customers, pitch our concept to our customers, because it was a concept. So the only money we needed was actually metro money. That how do you travel from one place to the other? So once we started doing that, we realized that there is a big market for us, because our first customer was actually a coaching institute which was right opposite the college main gate, which was Career Launcher. That was our first customer that we landed. So it was very easy for us after that, because we had some cash flow coming in and we were able to sustain. And then eventually after 2 years, we were actually talking for a partnership with one of the biggest publishers in India. And when we explored the partnership, we realized that this is a new line of business that they're already looking to develop. So that was the time then when they said, why don't you guys join us? So we worked with them for 6 months, created the whole process for them, and then finally exited the business in my 4th year itself. So that's how the first journey finished. And we sort of had some money saved from that, which was later used in developing the team and developing the infrastructure for my second business, which currently is the augmented reality platform that we are building on.
So why AR? How did you kind of land up into AR from civil engineering? Or you
So
mean
actually, it has
joined IIT just for the sake of it, without realizing whether you're going to be a civil engineer or whether you're going to be something else?
So that's actually true. To be honest, I did not have any understanding of which department or which discipline I'm going to choose when I'm going to IIT. For me, it was about either I go to IIT Delhi or IIT Bombay, and so my parents pushed me to. So I'm from Chandigarh, so my parents pushed me to stay near my native place. So they pushed me to go to Delhi. So that's how I entered IIT Delhi, and after that I realized I have minimal interest in pursuing civil engineering. So actually, to answer your question, there is no context of civil engineering in my entrepreneurial journey,
No,
and there is no yeah.
So, just on that note, there was somebody in my class who was also in IIT Delhi, but he was actually a painter. He never had any interest in doing electrical engineering. And he's at the moment in Germany and doing some, whole lot of animations and art and all that kind of a thing. No, I understand the passion side. Now I want to go to Dipinder. This is also a very interesting story. This man out of IIT Delhi starts a company with 12 founders. I mean, I've never heard of 12 founders getting together. And out of 12 founders, there are 8 of them are students and 4 of them are professors. So, man, this is so. What were you all kind of in this journey? Were you all fighting with each other? Were you kind of loving each other? So, how did this 12 number pan out, and how did you kind of was it a strength or was it a weakness?
Right, Pradeep. I know it is very strange for 12 founders to come together and do something. We were actually 7 students and 5 professors. And we all started straight out of college. Soon after we were passing out the students, we were incubated in IIT Delhi. I think it has its pluses and minuses. Such a large co-founding team and promoters team. But on balance, I think it was, at least for us, an advantage. More of an advantage than a disadvantage. The disadvantage can be that decision making is relatively slower, and there's potential for confusion. Right, 12 people cannot think alike. at any point in time. But the advantage, one of the advantages was that the quality of decision making was better, right? It was not one person's whims or fancy. It got a well-rounded perspective and view from many people based on their experiences, and that I think was a big advantage for us. Unlike Kanav, none of us had any entrepreneurial DNA or experience. I am not from a business family, so we I think needed needed even more of that. Another advantage was that we were like a team in itself. Initially, there were 5 professors and 7 of us at that time passing out students, so we did not really have to rely on employees. We could do all the work ourselves. We were a large enough team, and that was kind of useful. But even in general, it was a more robust team. If one person fell ill or one person was feeling low, there was somebody else who could energize and take things forward for that duration, right? If one person was reckless or wanted to take too many risky moves or dreamy, there were others who were more grounded and who would execute things and maybe more conservative. And so all of these things, I think, made it more robust and more well-rounded and balanced for us.
Another question which comes to my mind is, you see, because I've been with IBM for 11 years, and I know that around 2001 or so is when IBM India started scaling up, and we got down to a strength of 140,000 people in India. In fact, it was the largest center, even overtaking US at that particular point in time. But when I think back, in 2000, you would have finished in 2002. I mean, I don't recollect, computer vision, that is the area which is your core line of business, being something, very popular. So how did you kind of get into computer vision, and how was the struggle and how was the journey?
Right. And since you mentioned IBM, I did my first internship at IBM India Research Lab, which was situated in IIT Delhi at that time. And that was in vision, computer vision and stuff. You could say AR. I have been reflecting on my decisions. I always like maths and physics compared to, let's say, chemistry or biology. And then it was just the rank because of which I got into computer science. But within computer science, vision was an area which had, visualization. You could see things compared to, let's say, networking or something like that, where it will be pieces of code and only backend stuff happening. So that always excited me. So that was my area from, let's say, second year onwards, and it was my master's thesis as well. And that is why I was closer to those kind of people, Professor Subhashish Banerjee, etc., who became co-founders of the company. So the reason we chose vision was because that is what we knew. That is what we were trained for, and that is what we were passionate about. And thankfully, I think it has been a growing area ever since then. Vision and AI, there have been waves. This deep learning wave for last few years has really expanded it. The Moore's law has been kicking in, data, all kinds of factors coming together. Similar for AR, VR. But we had sufficient opportunities. Security, surveillance was one area. September 11 had happened at that time. We started in 2002, and there was, security situation was one clear area where it was required, but there were other areas, self-driving cars, etc., more recently. So yes, that was based on what we liked, all the founders, and thankfully there has been sufficient need in the market to keep going.
Okay, very interesting. Now let's look at now Swami. So Swami, to get into a combination of building a platform, some hardware, some software, it's not exactly, India is not exactly a great place for that, I know when I look at what Shirith was doing, but both these guys, Dipender and Kanav, have been more on the software side. So how did you kind of get into this, and what was the driver to be, going into your own startup? What was the driver to be looking at immersive technologies? So what tell us more,
Thanks, Pradeep, for asking me that particular question, like about how the hardware and the software is going to get married in India. So the good part is we were looking into the product, which is quite fascinating, and it's coming from a very reputed companies. And once we were looking to these immersive market where the hardware really the requirement to run in the software. So the very first requirement was the hardware. Hardware product was the very first requirement. Even we are, and when we are looking into the market in India, the global market was also like emerging. So we started researching very early at IIT Delhi. I came back from Denmark, where I really have a very good working in Denmark Technical University. But really to build up a team around the hardware was a challenge. So IIT ecosystem helped me to develop a hardware product. The reality was we need a platform, and that is the hardware. So very first stage, we designed a few of the prototype, and we learned it that where we are going to get failed. We really failed at multiple times, and then we start like evolving around the first stage, second stage, and in 2015 we start like looking into build up the very classical kind of the hardware, and even it worked out in a way that that's a cool part in India where we have lots of the cultural heritage, we have lots of the museum here, and we adopted that this is the right requirement of the market, and we can build up the product for the museums and the experience center for the corporates. So it's a starting from a very toughest journey, and then evolving into the direction when we can collaborate to the people, and when we can have a right bundle of the product is hardware and the software. So lots of the learning and the failure was there for sure. And as the Kshitij and my
Tell me, you mentioned that the IIT Delhi ecosystem was also helpful to you. I mean, what ecosystem are we talking about? I mean, I am not aware of, kind of great entrepreneurial focus that maybe my thinking is more than, 30, 40 years back. But what is happening? What kind of ecosystem are we talking about,
So even the Kanav and the Kshitij was talking about that the early stage team is always a difficult task. When I came back to India, so there is no space there to work around. I went to IIT Delhi, the couple of the professors door I know, and I was pretty much like lucky one, so I got a space in the Vision Lab. So I started like building up a very small team. I invited a couple of the bunch of the interns to explore the product, and then evolve with lots of the entrepreneurs who already did the product in the journey of the hardware. So the Deep Gupta from the Cyber Media and another alumni, I keep on talking to them how we really can soften the early stage journey. So the alumni who is from IIT Delhi, they start supporting, the professors is supporting, and they the early stage really they know that this is that kind of the toughest journey. If they will support, so probably the things will come forward. And even the FITT is the one of the good place which helped us to design the second and the third phase of the product. So the ecosystem from the IIT and the IIT surrounding is really helped us to design the product there.
Okay, thank you. Now, Shujat, coming back to you, now, what message would you pass on to entrepreneurs, who would like to learn from what you successful people are doing? What kind of takeaways would you have for the audience in terms of what lessons did you learn? What would you recommend to them? Tell us.
I mean, not talking about the XR space as whole, but like general entrepreneurship. I think that everybody over here will also agree with me that the most important factor is for any of you or any of us to really persevere, because I think that is the most important part of being an entrepreneur. And I also tell this to all of my employees right now. Now we've become a much bigger team. Is that like you like never run out of capital. It's not as if that a company shut down because I've lost capital, I've lost all the money, or a business is not working. I think you shut down a company when you stop persevering. I think as long as you can persevere and grind through it, sometime things will look brighter. So I feel that like a lot of times in India, it becomes like a story that somebody came and did this and now became that. I feel that that's it's great to have such stories, but I feel what goes behind it takes 5 years to become an overnight success, if not more, maybe 10 years. I think that is something which has to be talked about more honestly and has to be shared across more honestly, because for every success, there are about 100 failures that nobody will talk about.
Absolutely.
And I think that is the most.
Less than 2% of entrepreneurs really make it, And here I come to the second question, which is more related to immersive technologies. Now,
Yeah.
see, immersive technologies have been around for the last 25 years. And
Right.
as the case with any emerging technologies, if you are too early in the game, then you get tired of waiting that it's going to happen, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. If you're too late, then you miss the opportunity, kind of story. So when
Yeah.
you would have got into this, it would have already been around for quite a few years. And I don't know what signs were there in terms of tipping and all that kind of a thing. So what made you persist in immersive technology?
No, I think it's just I remember when I first came to the Media Labs 2011. I think the Oculus CV1 was just on Kickstarter, if I remember. This is
Yeah,
in 2011.
2012.
Yes, 11, 12. And Google Glass was about to come out. And I remember, I think like Larry and Sergey coming to MIT and saying, we're going to give everybody a Google Glass. And we got it. So once you saw that experience, right, and you realized,
Right.
yeah, this is where the world should go. Like this is where both in VR and AR. I mean, and this is the right way or the new way of experiencing content or experiencing the digital world around you. And it's been 7, 8 years since, right? And the industry has gone through lots of ups and downs. If you look at the Gartner hype cycle, you'll see all this. Okay, now it's illusionment, now it's disillusionment. All this keeps on happening. So the whole idea is that somebody somewhere will have to make this a reality, right? I mean, if we don't do it in India, maybe Apple will do it, maybe Google will do it, maybe Facebook will do it, God knows. And that is something that is the inevitable truth, and you really believe in it when you really see it. And if you sort of project ahead that if this becomes like my spectacles or like contact lenses or the rest becomes very good or the clarity becomes very good, suddenly you have all these new experiences that can happen. And generally, I have always believed in ecosystems. I think technology has to be ecosystem driven. It always is ecosystem driven, and it has to be application and use case and pain points backward. I mean, you can create the best glass out there. I mean, but it has no ecosystem around it. Like nothing's going to happen. So these are the parts that need to work together. And more often than not, it's not a tech problem. It's more like a people problem, like most of the times. And I think all of us who have run companies know that if you can get the right people, mentor the right people, they will make any technology you want them to make. Just need to make sure that they have the right guidance and vision. And that's what I feel is my major job each day in this company.
Right.
So yeah, so that is the whole like reason why I believe that AR or VR or XR should be the next big thing.
Understand. Now, kind of, I want to ask you. You see, yes, follow your passion is great. Being an entrepreneur is great. But you see, when you follow your passion, there are also bills to be paid. So
Yeah.
how do you kind of strike that balance in terms of of course you had made some money also in fourth year, but Derek, how did you kind of make sure that you also are able in a position to pay the bills and follow your passion?
So I think most of it is, looking for early signs of success or early signs of traction.
Yes.
So when you say passion is, one side of the story. The other side of the story, like you said, is how do you, actually monetize your passion. So, the other side of the story is that if you are able to find early signs of success or early signs of traction, and then later build on it. So, there are people who are ready to support you. It doesn't necessarily have to be investors. You have family, you have friends, they can also be the first pre-angel investors in your company. And if you're just starting up, and, they can also contribute to your, success later on. And I think that's where, that's a big takeaway for, all the young entrepreneurs like me who want to start up a business and have a big roadblock when they think about their passion or want to follow their passion, that where will they pay the rent or where will they pay the salaries from. So I think before thinking that, they should actually evaluate and see that is there any early sign of traction or is there any early sign of success. And if that is the case, then they should either go to family or friends and do a crowdfunding or something like that, or maybe go to customers, find 10 customers and do a small POC with them and get money from them. You don't have to charge in life; you can just charge in thousands and
Uh,
get up and running.
Very good thoughts, and it kind of builds up on what Shidit was saying. Shidit was talking in terms of getting the right people, And here again, it's the
Yeah.
same thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a working environment, but when you get the right
Hmm.
people around you who, kind of believe in you and then kind of, support you in the process. So end of the day, yes, and again, the point that you made in terms of when you see traction, you got to hit hard, hit hard
Yeah.
and quick and hard is a very critical factor. Okay, now I move on to Dipender. Dipender, what do you think should the young entrepreneurs of the day should be kind of really avoiding or should be doing?
Right, right. So I think, and especially as tech entrepreneurs, it is for an entrepreneurial journey, it is better to place the passion on your customers or end consumers. What difference or value add do you want to make to their lives? Rather than, being passionate about building something independent of whether it is really needed or required by someone or whether it will create value. And if you do that, if you're passionate about creating value in your customers or end consumers life using technology perhaps, right, then I think it'll automatically, that value will also flow to you in terms of I feel that the right way of measuring value add is profits, not revenue, not profitability, but absolute value of profits. And that really, if that is happening, or that has a possibility of happening, then you'll also get the funds initially if you need investments, if you want to raise funds, or directly you can bootstrap via your customers. So being passionate about making a difference to somebody's life, a business's life, or lives of large number of consumers and consumers, I think that is where the passion should lie, and that would automatically help in the initial journey.
I really like the idea that you're very strongly focused on profits. And if you've got any problem in handling all the profits that you're making, I'm there to help you. No worries. So if that be the case,
You know,
yeah.
so Pradeep, the thing is, so this has been a transformation for me, right? And I think in India in general, or maybe as coming from techie side of things, we, even if we are on an entrepreneurial journey, we are sort of shy of making money or making profits or talking about it, right? Because I think that that perspective changed for me in a big way, and that has helped me, right? So that's why I'm putting it out there.
No, I agree. I understand what you're saying.
And one more thing there, making profits is for the company is different from making personal wealth. They are of course correlated, but these two are two different things. I may not draw any salary or dividend from the company, but if the business is making profit, then that means that that's a sign of the right kind of value add getting injected into the customers and into the market.
Okay. So now moving on to Swami. Swami, you see, one of the biggest challenges I see when I look at the wide spectrum of startups that I come across, I find that 60% of them are coming from technology background. Another 20%, especially in the VR AR space, are coming from film production background, and the balance 20% are coming from some other background. So very often the technology people seem to be so lost into technology that they forget that, end of the day, there's something called customer also, I mean, I find that some of the startups, if I ask them, if you're in education, who's giving you pedagogy, and they've gone about developing solutions without even consulting the business side. So when in your journey did you turn from a technology perspective to a business perspective?
Oh, that's a very important part for in our journey. So we were not building the product like based on only on the technology. The POC is there. Once the POC was with us, we was always consulting to the surrounding people or the customers who are going to use our product. And they start showing their interest, so we can build up the whole product which they are going to use it further. So that is going to always help us look on the side of the customers and the surrounding people who is going to build the product which should be the right fit for the market. So at early stage, it was happening in our venture, like we may be looking into the just on the technology only, but the people are not using the only technology. They are going to use the product which need to give them the right experience. So at very early stage, we even approached the few museums. They told us what we really require, and there was a gap at early stage.
So what I really,
And
fabulous. Your voice is dropping away. So therefore, I will summarize the discussion so far. What I really love is the key insights that all of you have given. And if I were to summarize the key takeaways, it really comes down to people, it really comes down to value, and it really comes down to the customer. And the Brave New World, the mantra is that you not only have to be innovative all the time, but you have to be extremely nimble. And as Kanav said, that yes, if you see an opportunity or if you get traction, you just got to go hard on that and kind of make it a success. And of course, you got to believe in yourself and just keep going. Now, it has been really absolutely fabulous to talk to all of you. Thank you very much for joining in. And let's go across to the audience and get